Hey, good afternoon, guys. Thanks for watching my channel today. As you may not, as you may or may not know, I like to talk about fishing, primarily fishing after the age of 70. Um, and I'm constantly looking for things that are either going to improve my skill sets, my ability to catch fish, or also to help me to continue to be able to fish even longer. I'm 77. I'm going to be 78 later this year. And I guess it won't be long before I'm going to be 80. Kind of hard to believe, but we're all headed in that direction, I guess, if we're lucky enough. And I want to be able to fish not only the next couple of years, but I want to fish, for the next 5, 10 years. And in order to do that, one of the things I figured out is going to have to take a little better care of myself. So this video today, I'm going to talk a little bit about something that I would highly recommend to all the guys that are my age who are a little younger, a little older, and that is to start eating one particular food that I think will help you, significantly help you improve your health. And before I get into it, let me just say that I've spent my whole life pretty much eating anything I wanted, anytime, drinking whatever I wanted, anytime, sometimes to the point of too much, but never really had much of an effect. I've always been a pretty active guy. I guess I've always been fortunate to be able to burn off, the excess calories. And, there's been plenty of times I've skipped meals, usually because of fishing. But I guess, one kind of balances the other. But very few times have I ever eaten anything I didn't like. And very few times have I actually found that many things that I don't like. But there are certain things. I mean, to this day, you couldn't get me to eat a beet to save my life. I can't stand to look at them, can't stand to put them in my mouth. And, I don't like the taste. So it's just one of those foods that I just can't stand. But I can eat almost anything else. I mean, people talk about, uh, spinach. I love spinach. I can't think of a single vegetable or fruit that I don't like. Kale, again, a lot of people won't eat kale. It doesn't bother me. I'll eat it. The bottom line is, like many of you, I've spent my entire life eating and eating and eating. And surprisingly, after I retired back in 2017, 8 years ago, my weight was pretty normal. And then after a couple of years of being retired and being able to go fishing and do whatever I want, I guess I got a little lazy. But I continued the same kinds of eating habits. And over a period of 7 or 8 years, packed on a few extra pounds. And those extra pounds made a huge difference as I got older. Um, I have some heart issues. I have COPD, and what I discovered just in the last few years is that when you gain weight, your whole body suffers from it. In my case, it becomes harder to walk. It becomes harder to the excess weight. It puts an additional burden on my joints. I've had to have a knee replacement, total knee replacement. I have arthritis pretty bad in both hands, both wrists, and my shoulder. Um, and a lot of that is just age related. But a lot of my problems stem from the fact that I've just gained too much weight. And I've talked about it before in some of my videos. I've actually made some recommendations, not only for, some of the foods that I've started to eat and the dieting that I've taken on, but also some exercise that I think has helped me. Again, the end goal here is to be able to fish longer, to be able to get out there and continue doing what I enjoy the most. And the only way I'm going to be able to do that is if my health either improves or, stays at least where it's at today. So I've been fortunate. I've actually shed some weight, not quite back to where I was 8 years ago, but I've lost about 30 pounds. And I'm continuing to do many of the things that actually helped get me here. Not the least of which is not the diet as much as the intermittent fasting. I'm basically cutting off food around 8 o'clock at night. I'm not eating again until maybe lunch the following day. And that 15, 16 hours where I'm not eating or drinking anything allows my body to stop burning sugar or simple carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates, stop burning that for energy and switch over to burning some of the fat that I've stored over the years. And it seems to be working. I mean, I don't claim to be a medical practitioner of any kind, but I've read a lot about it and kind of learning as I go. Try to watch some of the vitamins that I'm eating. But I still, like many of you in your late 70s, I still have problems sleeping. I still have a number of different, uh, stomach problems. I mean, everything. I've had everything from an ulcer to, uh, internal issues with gas, with diarrhea, just different things that have made it very difficult sometimes to go fishing, or at least to go fishing as often as I'd like to. But I've been watching one guy on YouTube, and I really enjoy his videos. His name is Dr. Berg, Berg, and I tell you, I'd highly recommend him to you. He supposedly has over 2,500 YouTube videos, and the guy is really easy to listen to, easy to understand, and quite honestly, he's kind of easy to follow. As a result of many of his videos, I've stopped eating sugar. Used to use sugar in my coffee, don't use it anymore. I've cut back a little bit on my salt intake. I've cut out foods after about 8 o'clock at night. I now understand, what those salty pretzels or potato chips or, what the sweets, the baked goods, the cakes, the pies, what all those things, what impact they actually have on my body. Not only that, but how they affect my sleep. There was a period of time there I was getting up 6, 7 times at night and hard to get much rest when you wake up that often. So anyway, I tell you all this because I'm going to recommend a food that you may not want to even try, but I'm going to recommend it because I've been eating this now for maybe the last month and a half, and I hated it at first. It was kind of like beets. It was something that I couldn't imagine that I'd ever get used to eating. But I started eating it because it has a lot of significant food values. Um, and the name of it is sauerkraut. Now, before you go making any real strong judgments, let me just say that, I grew up and, from the time I was a little kid, my mother would make sauerkraut every New Year's Day. And even as kids, she would preach on the fact that you had to eat, some sauerkraut on the first day of each year for good luck. And we did. And it was horrible. And there were many times that, my brother and I would practically gag on it. And we'd probably put a little more emphasis on it than needed, but we hated it. And she made it. She didn't use raw uh, sauerkraut. I mean, she actually doctored it up a little bit. And I'm not sure what she added to it, but for most people at least, it wasn't nearly as pungent as raw sauerkraut can be. But anyway, over the years, I would eat it from time to time on New Year's Day, and that was about it. After I got married, my wife kind of carried on the same tradition for a number of years. And I mentioned it to her one time, and she said she actually added sugar to soften the taste a little bit. And, I'd have to admit her sauerkraut was a little easier, going down than my mother's was. But even at that, she stopped making it years ago. And I probably haven't eaten any sauerkraut up until about maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago when I heard Dr. Berg talking about it. And in his opinion, some of the benefits of eating sauerkraut, not necessarily because you're 75, but certainly it couldn't hurt to eat it when you're 75. So I just wanted to touch on some of these things, and you can certainly watch the videos yourself. But what he talked about primarily was the fact that sauerkraut is nothing more than fermented cabbage. And in other words, it's just rotted cabbage. I say that because I spent some time over in Korea when I was in the service, when I was in the Army. And we had Koreans that were actually part of our garrison, and they were called Katusas, I think it's Katusa, Korean augmentation to the United States Army. And they were, for the most part, they were pretty good guys. We enjoyed having them around, and, we got to know them pretty good. But one of their favorite foods was called kimchi. And I'll never forget, as long as I live, how horrible kimchi tasted, and literally what effect it had on the Koreans that were eating it, and what it was like to talk with them afterwards, because their breath it would literally, wilt a flower. I mean, it was horrible. But it was all a direct result from eating kimchi. And kimchi is essentially the same thing as sauerkraut. It's just simply fermented cabbage. So why is it good for you? And why am I recommending it? Well, because it's a combination of a prebiotic fiber and a probiotic, because it has friendly bacteria. In other words, it's good for your stomach. Now, I don't know how many of you have stomach issues. I have diverticulitis. I used to have an ulcer. I've had some issues with, constipation due to a lot of the drugs that I take, medicines, prescription drugs. And so, I'm very careful what I eat now, because it can have a dramatic effect on me. But Dr. Berg, one of the videos I watched with him, I took a few notes, and I'm not the greatest note taker, but I just wanted to touch on 8 things that he claims make sauerkraut such a good food for anyone at any age. And I'm going to start with number 1. It has enhanced nutrients. And this is important because a lot of the foods we eat, they're just a shell. There's nothing in it. They're so loaded with manufactured products that our bodies are not getting the nutrition that they should get from the food. And one of the pluses for sauerkraut is it has a number of enhanced nutrients. It'll also help to reduce gas production. Now, you wouldn't think that. I guess, a normal assumption would be that something that smells this bad and tastes this bad would probably produce gas. But in fact, it doesn't. It it actually eliminates gas. And that's something that at the very least, your wife would probably appreciate. It increases and I'm going to have troubles repeating this, but it's the acetylcholine. And what that means is it will improve your bowel movements. It'll increase your digestive juices, and it will increase or cause the pancreas to increase the release of certain enzymes, which is going to make you even more healthy. While it's doing all this, it increases the amount of lactic acid. It also spikes the vitamin C. You know, the government or whoever it is that makes these recommendations about how much vitamin C or vitamin D that we as human beings need, the amount of vitamin C in a normal serving of sauerkraut is roughly 10 times the amount of vitamin C that is normally recommended for, most people. That's a lot of vitamin C. It will do the same with vitamin K3, which actually helps with your endurance. And for me, at least, that's an important facet of bass fishing. I don't want to just be able to go fishing. I want to be able to fish a little longer. I want to be able to hang with it. And I've noticed over the past few years, I'm good for a couple of hours, but beyond that, I'm just worn out. So it's my hope, at least, the K2, vitamin K2 in sauerkraut will kind of help with my overall endurance. It also provides immune support. And, what does this really mean? Well, instead of catching every bug that comes along, it actually will go in and reinforce your T cells and other things in your body to fight disease, fight viruses, fight bacteria, more than most other foods. And lastly, it will spike vitamin U. And if you're like me, you probably never heard of vitamin U, but vitamin U can greatly increase and improve your stomach's ability to fight inflammation. We all have different issues, stomach issues, you call them that, whether it's diverticulitis or colitis or an ulcer. These are the types of things that it'll get us off the lake in a hurry, and they're no fun. And what vitamin U does is by increasing the amount of vitamin U in your body from eating sauerkraut, just one serving, your ability to fight this inflammation is greatly enhanced. So the bottom line is sauerkraut's really good for digestion. And, along with other things in the keto diet that I've kind of graduated into, I eat a lot of eggs, I eat a lot of fish, and I eat a lot of meat. I try to stay away from all the complex carbohydrates, the cakes, the pies, the candy, all the sweets, the sweet drinks, sugar in general. And things like this are what I hope are going to make a difference as I go forward. And to be honest with you, after, 4 or 5 weeks of eating sauerkraut 2 or 3 times a week, I'm starting to like it. My mother would probably roll over in her grave if she heard me say that, but in its rawest form, it's strong. There's no question about it. But I believe it does settle my stomach. It does help with my digestion. And for me, that's a home run. So anyway, I hope you give it a try. You might be surprised. Maybe you like it. Maybe you've tried it and don't like it. but consider the health benefits, particularly if you're my age or older, because again, I think your game plan is probably just like mine. You want to be able to get out there and continue to do the one thing that you really love to do, and that's fish. So thanks for tuning in today, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any comments, please leave them below. And if you wouldn't mind, give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, and please subscribe to my channel. Thanks again, and hoping you have a wonderful day.